Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. And now the Friday Crime Report. The last Friday crime report that I posted dealt with a Hollywood celebrity, Zachary Ty Bryan, who has had a number of brushes and run-ins with the law. He was a childhood star on the TV show Home Improvement. But these days, this guy has basically been famous for another reason, none of it good. Though the only crime greater than the ones that he's been accused of is the white media's ignoring of this story. They've downplayed it, treated it as a one and done and moved on. This guy's a celebrity. He's also become independently wealthy on his own, but even so, this guy's name is associated with a big-time TV show. He is a star. Though you wouldn't know it by how the white media has intentionally and deliberately been hands-off regarding his story. And he's not the only one. Danny Masterson was sentenced to 30 years for raping 2 women. You probably haven't heard much about this, the same way the white media wasn't giving us breathless coverage of his trial either. Now this guy is a big star, from a hit show, with a face and a name known by millions around the world, and he's best buds with Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis, among others. Star power, accusations of rape. You'd think the white media would be all over this morning, noon, and night, at least if you believed what the white media says about how they operate. So their silence on this one has been deafening. And as some of you may have heard, Danny Masterson is also part of the Church of Scientology. Scientology specializes in getting celebrities to join them. Tom Cruise is their most famous adherent, but he's far from the only big-name star that they have in their congregation. Now, we were told by the likes of Kamal Dumbbell that the reason he was making such a big deal out of Bill Cosby was because the Cosby case was an example of the intersection of fame and power. Well, Scientology has God knows how many hundreds of millions in their coffers, and they're the only church that prides itself on how many celebrities they have among them. So shouldn't the white media be all over Scientology like flies on poop? They were less afraid of tackling the Catholic Church than they are Scientology. But then again, the Catholic Church is a largely faceless organization. Whenever you go after the Catholic Church, the white media puts up images of cathedrals, not people. On the other hand, if you go after Scientology, you're going to be seeing faces of white people, particularly white male celebrities. To the white media, that's not a good target for their cameras. They want some black faces that they can shoehorn into the mix. Danny Masterson raped 2 women and was accused of raping a 3rd, and he was convicted for it on the very first try. Unlike with Bill Cosby, who was never charged with rape, and who the first trial ended in a hung jury, the DA had to come back and violate the law to engineer what amounted to an overblown molestation charge, which fell immediately apart on appeal. And yet the white media still lies about Bill Cosby. They use the verbiage and vocabulary as if to say that he was guilty. They use the same words. They make sure the viewer knows that they don't care about the trial having been shown to be a farce, or that the DA and the judge were proven to have violated the law to manufacture a conviction against him. All they care about is he's black, so we gotta maintain the narrative. Nobody's offering Danny Masterson's multiple rape victims any sort of airtime or putting them on camera to tell their stories. As with practically every other white sexual predator that's come to light, Lifetime hasn't made any surviving Danny Masterson series. This guy raped multiple women. He's a serial rapist. But not even a documentary about him. Oprah isn't talking to his victims either. And it's not like the white media doesn't know who they are. Their names are already public. There were 3 women who Masterson raped. He was convicted of raping Jane Does 1 and 2, but the jury deadlocked on Jane Doe 3, so he got away with that one. But even so, Jane Doe 3 has come forward. Her name is Chrissy Carter Bixler. She was a co-star on that 70s show alongside Danny Masterson, but more than that, Bixler was Masterson's girlfriend at the time. So this isn't some thwarted model, actress, whatever. This isn't sour grapes here. This was someone who he had been in a relationship with, not some anonymous thought. She was one of Danny Masterson's co-stars. And she was also one of his accusers. She's come forward to say that she had been one of his victims. The white media ought to be all over that, interviews, articles, the whole 9. But they're not. And just to show how determined the white media's bias is, Bixler was also blasting Ashton Kutcher and his wife Mila Kunis, both of whom Bixler worked with, because the two had sent letters of support to the court when it came time to sentence the serial rapist Danny Masterson, their friend. Bixler went beyond that, and she insinuated that Ashton Kutcher is also a sexual predator. She alluded to certain disturbing, if not incriminating, phone calls that she had overheard. This is who the white media is ignoring. A co-star of Danny Masterson's who's accused him of rape. I don't think any woman who's ever worked on a show with Bill Cosby has ever accused him of anything. It was always some thought, some model actress, whatever, some nobody skank who he never even met. But with Danny Masterson, you have women that he was in relationships with, women who he worked with for years accusing him of rape. Whatever the white media falsely claimed about Cosby, you can truthfully say about Danny Masterson. The white American media is pretty much ignoring this across the board, mostly limiting their so-called coverage to gossip tabloid outlets. You have to go to the British or Canadian media to find actual coverage. So you can tell, just as with Daniel Penny, the New York subway killer, the white media has a news embargo out. They've already put a prohibition on reporting on this one. The white media isn't rushing to put any microphones in the faces of castmates and defying them to denounce Masterson. Mila Kunis and even Ashton Kutcher had the nerve to write a letter of support for him, telling the judge that he wasn't an ongoing harm to society. But they weren't alone. Deborah Jo Rope also wrote a letter of support for this convicted serial rapist, as did Kurtwood Smith. So basically the most important members of the cast of that 70s show supported this guy. And this after he had been convicted of multiple rapes, including of a woman who they had worked with, a woman that they knew. They didn't think the letters that they wrote to support this guy would ever be made public, but they were. And what was the result for their careers after this came to light? Nothing. No white media feeding frenzy. None of the phony so-called activists from Me Too or Time's Up came after any of them. No cancellations, no anything. Nobody's lifted a finger to cancel them or demand that they go on an apology tour. Ashton and Mila made one blink-and-you'll-miss-it so-called apology, and that was it. The others who supported Masterson haven't even done that much. Now, anyone who didn't attack Bill Cosby was immediately demonized, from Felicia Rashad to Malcolm Jamal Warner. They wanted to make it clear, if you don't attack Cosby, then the white media will attack you. Meanwhile, Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis are sticking up for a serial rapist, and nobody's saying boo. Masterson's wife, Bayou Phillips, stood by her man during this entire sordid episode. She was never demonized, never even criticized for it. It's just, well, his wife's there with him, she's sticking by him, and that was that. She didn't get the Camille Cosby treatment. The white media and all of these commentators and such weren't saying, oh, how disgraceful, what the hell's wrong with her? But now that the sentence has been handed down, she's filed for divorce, this only days after the sentence. She stood by her man all the way up until the moment that he could no longer do anything for her, and now she's dumping him. The white media did everything they could to try to pressure Camille Cosby into divorcing Bill. They were hoping that she would do that. That was supposed to be the final nail in the coffin, and they would have played that as, see, this is the proof, he has to be guilty, even his own wife left him. But she didn't. So now that Bayou Phillips has left the serial rapist husband she was married to, why isn't the white media treating her like some sort of strong and independent woman? Why aren't they giving her the hero treatment? Oh, she walked away from the guy at last. No, they're not celebrating this one. So don't look for HBO to be doing any leaving the 70s documentaries. Kamau Dumbbell's suddenly totally disinterested in the intersection of celebrity and power now. Paramount's definitely not giving money to any other talentless Z-list idiot to have them do a documentary about Danny Masterson. You have all these women from Bixler to Leah Remini saying that Scientology is a rape-happy cult, but is being totally ignored, even after all this. In a country like the United States, it's hard to imagine a group more powerful than a church. And the main thing Scientology is known for is having celebrities who claim to follow it. Celebrity, a religious organization, and sexual assaults, that's irresistible for the white media, at least it would be if it wasn't for the color of who they'd have to talk about. Me Too and Time's Up have proven that they're nothing more than sock puppet organizations created by and promoted by white power. It was never about protecting women. It was and is all about deflecting attention from the sexual predators and putting the attention on black men instead, and ultimately containment of any claims that are not thrown out of court. See, right now, there are no black men who they can try to deflect attention onto right now. They can't afford to cover the Danny Masterson conviction and sentencing at all. There's no black men that they can use as a distraction. And that's where we come in. We got to make sure that people know that this happened. See, the reason the sexual harassment tsunami became a thing is because there's a class of people in the society who are immune from law, and who also are in a position to use their jobs as a way to coerce sex out of people or keep them silent when they've been abused. Black men don't have that power and never have. So when white male executives were being pointed out and driven from their jobs, at least a few of them, there began a plot to change the headlines. And because the sexual predators who have been carrying out these crimes were also the same white media executives who controlled what the headline said, it was child's play for them to decide to start deflecting attention onto any old black man whose name was even marginally known. With the exception of R. Kelly, all these other black men who they tried to manufacture cases against fell apart. And speaking of falling apart, Tom Cruise should be on the hot seat. He's the celebrity face of Scientology, at least he was for a while. But that's part of the flimsy illusion of complexity that the white media tries to push whenever they themselves have been cornered on their hypocrisy. White supremacy relies on duality because it is sophisticated. So they'll claim that, well, we didn't go in on Tom Cruise about all this because, well, he's a big star and we don't want to alienate him because then we won't be able to get access. But keep in mind that when Sumner Redstone and the brass at Paramount got crossways with Tom Cruise, they damaged his image. They put out this tsunami of bad articles and press pieces made to make him look like he was crazy. For a while, people were saying it looked like Tom Cruise would be finished. They wanted to send a message, and the message was there's nobody so big or so famous that they can't be taken down, not by the men who actually run and control the media. They were showing who was in charge. So the white media picks and chooses who they want to attack. And the media executives are not at all afraid of losing access to Tom Cruise. They were the ones who made Tom Cruise a star in the first place. And as soon as Cruise is gone, they'll just invent another mega star who'll do the exact same thing for them. The game has levels to it, but the players remain the same, as does their goal. You don't see late-night comedians making a big deal out of Danny Masterson, and you won't. They didn't even do it with Harvey Weinstein. When's the last time you've heard any of these late-night comedians even using that guy's name? They don't even mention him, same way they don't mention Woody Allen or Roman Polanski. They only make it a punchline if it's a black man they're talking about. They only constantly bring up a celebrity's name and keep bringing it up even in places where it doesn't belong, if they're black. Scientology itself has been lampooned, but now it's gone from ridiculous to dangerous. What Danny Masterson did wasn't funny at all, though. Scientology should be getting the same treatment as any other cult, or at least the same treatment as the Catholic Church got. But the white media can't do that because there's no black faces they can put in front of the cameras. No good targets. So as the black grassroots, we're going to make sure that we remind people of all of these sexual predators who the white media doesn't want to talk about. Danny Masterson is in all likelihood going to prison at least for a while. Though I gotta tell you, if I was laying odds, I wouldn't be surprised at all if an appeals court reduces his sentence or throws it out altogether on the basis of some made-up technicality. It's not about guilt or innocence. It never has been. It's about who the laws were written to punish and who they weren't, and the laws weren't written to punish those classified as white. So I would advise Danny Masterson's victims to comfort themselves with his sentence as long as it lasts. Though between now and then, Danny Masterson can prepare for what will surely be the most challenging role of his career, inmate. And that's this week's Friday Crime Report. Keep your eyes open and stay on alert, because there's a lot worse criminals out there than the ones the white corporate media chooses to show you. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Jacques Hargett, Sakina Collins, Nancy, Williams, and Antonio Daniels. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.